All right, and welcome to episode 1 of the Mythopoeia podcast. Today, we're going to be explaining the purpose behind this podcast. We're going to take a look at some of the tools I like to use when I write, and we're going to start laying down some foundations. So, the first of these, um, basically, as sort of a fun little experiment for myself, I'm going to try to write a book on camera. We'll see how this goes in the future. In the incredibly unlikely event that I do get a publishing deal or something, I suppose this podcast is going to have to come down, but I hope it never comes down to that. Who knows? Maybe it'll be with Let's Plays, increasing the popularity of things. We'll just have to see from there. But for now, I'm going to try to keep it pretty real. I'm going to try to set aside an hour or so of my time, whatever I can get whenever I have a moment, and we're just going to go and write and create and hopefully have a good time of it. Um, I'm going to try to do all the world building and stuff on camera, but we'll see how that goes. When I was first planning out this podcast, I was like creating and discarding things even before I had the download. Sorry, not the download, the screen recorder thing set up. So the mind never stops creating, even if you wanted to, right? So I'm going to be doing my stuff on Google Docs so I can access it from any device. Although truth be told, I don't really see it access it. I don't really see myself writing on anything other than my personal laptop because that's where all the download stuff. Excuse me, sorry. That's where the screen capture thing is. So, um, like I said, it's likely going to be like a personal computer. But if the urge to write strikes me when I'm away from that, I can just go and open up Docs and start doing things. This is Nameberry, which is a baby name website, and it's very useful for naming characters. And here's behind the name for some of the more obscure names. And finally, here's Wiktionary, which I like to use um, for naming, like, characters, places, constructing languages, things like that. Because you have access to lots of different languages, including a few more obscure ones like Manx, I think, um, and Greenlandic, Icelandic, uh, things like that. So if I have like a cluster of letters or something that I think, ooh, that sounds good, and I'll run it through Wiktionary and I'll see if it means something, if it has a meaning I don't want it to, or alternatively, if it has a meaning I haven't thought of before and I like it a lot, then I'll find a way to weave that into the story. Um, so I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna set up a few documents. We're going to call this one seeds. If I can type. Where we're gonna call it seeds because even though I promised I was gonna do all the world building on camera, that's not strictly the case, I'm afraid. I've got some ideas written down here in this notebook that I was gonna try to go and build off of. Because I find it really hard to like build an entire world like on the fly. I guess maybe having like an audience and wanting to avoid dead air would be an incentive to keep on going. So we're going to put that to one side for now. So we're going to have seeds. Ooh, whoops. Hang on. Um, these are just like some stuff left over from a thing I was doing on Discord. They're not important to what we're doing right now. I don't even think there's anything in those documents. I was gonna like write some lore and then I just got lazy. Let's just can't remove from view. Alright, whatever. So let's just kind of get out of the way. So there's gonna be seeds, there's gonna be snippets. And snippets is sometimes because when I'm just kind of sitting around, I'll like think of something that'll like start happening in the story, and I'll um like if I have a basic idea of what I want to do, then like scenes will kind of start playing out in my head, and I want to go and like jot them down so I can work them into the story proper later. Because I find it really hard to like sit down and like do things from beginning to end. And from what I've been told to talking to other authors, um, it's better to just kind of chunk it and piece it together. That method might not work for you, and I've personally never tried it myself. Um, but I think it's a nice thing to have on hand because those snippets they disappear fast. Uh, I was given a piece of advice once from an author whose name I'm afraid I cannot remember. I'll try to have it out there during the next episode. Um, I asked her, "How do you go about like writing a story?" And she said, "Start at the end and work backwards, like asking how did it come to be like this, and so on and so forth until you get to the beginning. Just think of your story as a series of causes and effects." Unfortunately, I have no idea what I want to do. But we're probably going to see that maybe in this episode, maybe in 5 episodes. We'll have to see. So we have seeds, snippets, um, outline. I like having an outline. I'm really scatterbrained, and it helps keep everything nice and tidy. Um, going to have a lore document, or no, let's call it world building. It's a world building document. I'm sorry. My fingers are going faster than the computer right now. So I like having a world building document. For those who are not in the know, world building is the process in which you create the setting that your story takes place in, and I really, really enjoy world building. There's generally two methods of doing it, although I find it's easier to do like kind of a mix of them. To use the old D&D terminology, there is inside out and outside in. Okay, so inside out world building is when you start from very small, say just towns where the story takes place, and work your way out into the wider world. With inside out world building, you get a very detailed feel of the setting you're supposed to the setting you're going to be writing in. You get a very detailed feel of that. But like the grander scale is a little hazier. And for some stories, that's fine. If you're just going to be focusing on these extra little places, it might not necessarily be important that you develop the rest of the world, and that's okay. Or like that sort of vagueness for the wider world might be something you're interested in. The other one, outside in, is the opposite. You start with the wider world and work your way into the smaller components. So that creates a feeling of really good internal consistency. But it also runs the risk of you like getting confused because you have a lot of like teeny tiny bits to keep track of and things like that. Um, so you can pick one and stick to it, or you can just sort of do a mix of both. I think I'm going to be doing a mix of both, actually. So I'm going to linger on the screen a little while longer so you can take your screen capture of it or whatever. Gonna get rid of that so you've got something a little prettier to hold on to. Alright, because I'm going to delete that because we're going to need all that space to do some serious world building. Okay. Um, so we have seeds, snippet, outline, world building. We're gonna have one called names. Because so I have a habit of kind of scavenging names. I'll take them from when I was in high school. I was the librarian's aide in my senior year, and I when I would sort the files, if there was a kid who had an interesting name, like a first name or last name, I would just kind of casually steal it. I'm not ashamed to admit that. Or from just I don't know walking along, standing in line at the doctor's office, and I hear um, or see like an interesting set of sounds or like a name or something. I'll think, ooh, that's good, and I want to save it. So that's what names is here for. So we have seeds, snippets, outline, world building, names, and finally, here's I always like to have one of these here. Is an extra ideas folder. Because sometimes I'll go to bed and I'll have a dream and I'll think, oh, that would make for a great story. But the thing is, you can't remember those things, so it's nice to have an extras folder to go and jot those things down in. So we have names, world building, outlines, snippets, seeds, and I don't think extras got saved actually. Hang on, let's make a fresh one. Did it? Oh, hang on, let me. No, I think we have to go make a new one. So let's just call it extras. There we go. Okay. So I've introduced the meaning of this podcast. I've shown you some of the tools, and now we're gonna start laying down some foundations, like I promised. So I have this notebook here. I brought this notebook on me when I was on a plane, going on vacation with my family, and I decided once when I was bored that I was gonna go do a bit of writing to stay off of the boredom, and I think I ended up just kind of falling asleep, but that's okay. I'm going to talk. I'm going to type down verbatim everything here that I want to use. Um, it starts off with this preface. Here's a list of the places you must go. For now, to entertain ourselves, there should be some commas, I think. For now, to entertain ourselves. Uh, oh no, I'm sorry. That says for now to entertain ourselves. That's really weird. It's not even a word. Oh, hang on. I'm stupid. It says now to entertain yourself. We're off to a really good start. For now to entertain yourself, you must write without stopping. So it starts off with that preface. Actually, there's a lot of other stuff in here that I think I'm going to put into seeds. But now let's just start with the actual meat and potatoes of it. Over here we have a description of 5 locations, it looks like. I'll try to provide as much background on them as possible, but it's been a really long time since that vacation, and I don't really know if I can. So they're all bulleted, right? First one is actually no, it's bold. No. Arl. Let's put that in italics actually. It's like a flavor text. Uh, the city of 10,000 spires. Whoops. Let's see. Okay, so it says Arl, the city of 10,000 spires. Here, the golden orb king keeps his court, built deep in jungles of built deep in the jungles of Zahir. So I didn't have any internet at the time. I think I was writing from out of like a snow cone shop or something. And I actually know the meaning behind this term Zahir. It's from an even it's a typo. It's based off of an even earlier type when I had written to here instead of there. Oh, Google puts in the little arrows. That's quite nice. Zahir. So Zahir is an example of one of those random noises. So I am going to go onto Google and see if it has any meanings I don't really want to associate with it. Okay, so it just kind of seems to be somebody's username on a variety of social media sites. I'm not really a big fan of the gratuitous X's, actually. Can we write it as, like, so here? Evidently not. I'm afraid I don't know much about Istanbul Sahir University. I don't even think I'm pronouncing that right. Um, okay. Yeah, no, I don't. I think Wizards of the Coast already has claim to that one. Or excuse me, Obsidian Entertainment. Resident of the Sea of Poison. Although I do like me some I do like me some D&D. Although I'm afraid I don't know too much about Neverwinter Nights or the Forgotten Realms campaign setting. I'm sorry, I kind of blanked out there because that one confused me. Zahir means poison in Turkish. Okay, so let's see if we can find an older version of that term or any sort of related terms. Hang on, I feel like I made a mistake. Let's go on English Wiktionary, type in Zahir. There we go. Okay, so there's other terms. Uh, I apologize for the dead air. Um, Poison, venom, toxin. Zahirli means poisonous. I'm not quite sure how that would be pronounced. So let's just mark this one for now. Well, watch me break my word like 10 podcasts later when there's a character whose name has like a million X's in it. Okay, so that's finally one part of the notes. Uh, I really want to know who the Golden Orb King is. I like leaving little snippets here and then because I like leaving little snippets here and there because it gives me something to like grab onto and build off of as the story progresses. I've seen this before in Harry Potter, my second read through of Harry Potter. Um, I was really fascinated by Rowling's ability to like take little parts in the story that just seem like flavor and then like build off of them like a book or two later. Like for example, in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone or Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone in the U.S., um, when Hagrid gets off the motorbike, he mentions that he borrowed it from young Sirius Black. It just seems like a throwaway name at the time, but like in Prisoner of Azkaban, Sirius is a major plot point. Um, I also remember in Harry Potter and the Half Blood Prince, Harry stashes his potions textbook. The neighbor's dog is barking. I'm sorry, I got a little distracted. Harry stashes his potions textbook in a cabinet inside the room of requirement, and he marks the cabinet by putting a stone bust on top of it and then giving it a wig and a crown to make it um, easier to identify. The crown comes back in Deathly Hallows as the diadem of Ravenclaw, I think. Um, so that ability to sort of like grab onto the details and use it to build things, that always really fascinated me. Here's a bit of advice I found somewhere. I cannot for the life of me remember where I found it. Um, as the author, you will always know more about your world than you will ever have a chance to use. Um, and maybe you'll find a way to use it all, but I find that like every time you build off of something or you knot two things together, there's always more like branches and shoots coming off, and the way it just kind of grows and grows is really fascinating to me. And because you know more about your setting like than you'll ever get to use, there will always be little opportunities for you to keep building onto things. You can have two things that seem seemingly disconnected, and you can think, oh, those actually fit together quite nicely. Or maybe something that started off as flavor can end up becoming a major branch of the world building. So it's just a little something to think about. Um, so that was a nice little tangent. There we go. I'm sorry, I just woke up from a nap. I'm a little bit out of it. So let's get back on topic. The next location I wrote about was called Discomgary. Let's unitalicize that. Oh wait, hang on. Let's run a couple searches on RL and Discomgary. So RL.com is apparently a website that makes wedding rings and a Swedish surname and a human name for little girls. Um, I'm guessing it comes from the Latin word for gold, aurum. Although I'm afraid I can't really speak for the Swedish novelist, or anyone else who bears the name Arl. Actually, let's take a look at that. No, it doesn't seem to be in the archives. Maybe surname dot behind the name.com. Did I mistype that? Surnames. There we go. Oh no, that doesn't seem to be in the archives either. Oh well. So where are we? Oh yeah, Discomgary. Let's search on that. I think I'm gonna keep oral as it is. I quite like that. Discomgary. Nope. Apparently that document has not ever been used on a piece of writing in the shallow web. So yeah, yes. Um, that's very apt. Discomgary is a type of discomfort because iPhone. Sorry. I think I was trying to type the word discomfort on my smartphone, and the screen was a bit damp, and so I kind of couldn't. So Discomgary. Um, land of grit. Land of grey stones. Once, behemoths owned this land. Under dull skies, great domes of their shells litter black green grass. So, Okay, so I can actually remember. Um, I remember a little bit about what I was imagining when I was describing Discomgary and the shells of the behemoths. Um, I cannot for the life of me remember what they were called, but I imagined them as like when it talks about their shells, I imagine like the shells of glyptodons, right? Um, so let's make a note of that so I don't forget. Did I spell that right? Yeah, glyptodon is spelled right. Okay, so I kind of imagine they sort of looked like the shells of glyptodons. Um, I think I wrote Discongary to sort of contrast with um, Aural. Um, Aural, I'd say, was definitely inspired by sort of the legends of the legends of like El Dorado, the city of gold, hidden in the jungles of Central and South America. Um, so I think that's what I was thinking. We'll get back to those 10,000 spires later. So next one, uh, Valeron of the Clouds. I'm afraid I cannot, for the life of me, remember where the name Thalaron came from. Looks like it's someone's last name in an 1855 law case, which is written in French. That doesn't look like French at all. That looks like Polish, I would have said, but oh mercy. Random unpronounceable. Oh well, that explains it. Thalaron is a random sequence of letters. So yeah, I think Thalaron is safe to consume. Sorry, safe to use. Safe to consume. I guess I'm saying because the word Thalaron sort of makes me think of thalidomide. But it has nothing to do with thalidomide, not at all. Thalamide, city, mirth, lotuses. Definitely channeling the land of the lotus eaters in the Odyssey, um, which I cannot remember the name of at the time actually. Um, I'm gonna have to go read the Odyssey proper actually because I don't think I've ever actually read it. But when I was a little kid, I really liked Greek mythology, and I had this like children's adaptation of it called The Adventures of Ulysses, and I used to read that all the time because I thought Greek mythology was the coolest thing. Um, so this podcast is definitely going to inspire me to become more well read because I've always regretted that I didn't read enough. Um, one piece of advice that I've read and received a lot is like, in order to be a good writer, you need to be a good reader. You know, um, you can't build worlds if you don't have anything to build off of. Um, and that's a very sound piece of advice, I think. I find that my writing always becomes like loads and loads better if I'm reading like a book at the time. Um, so I'm definitely going to be trying to read more. I think that'll strengthen my writing a lot. Hey, I said I was gonna keep it real. This is a learning process for both of us. So anyway, Thalaron of the Clouds, City of Mirth and Lotuses. Sunset tea of this land grants powerful sleep. Again, really channeling, really channeling the land of the Lotus Eaters in the Odyssey. I'm sorry, this is gonna bother me. Um, I really want to know what it was called. I feel like it was called Libya, but now I'm not really sure. Well, Herodotus says it was in Libya. Um, I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to work on that a lot. I noticed that like when I'm writing, I tend to get distracted by little minutia, and I spend like hours just kind of hopping around the internet until I sit back and I'm thinking, wait, what the heck did I just do? So we're gonna try to keep that under wraps. We're gonna try to do less of that. Um, those little flights of fancy, so we can just focus on the writing. Valoron of the Clouds, City of Mirth and Lotuses, the sunset tea of this land grants, powerful sleep. Locals claim the seas along the coast are cool and make for pleasant boating. I'm sorry because I'm looking at my notebook while typing and it's hard. Illusionists love this place. Um, I think that little snippet about like sunset tea and the cool oceans and pleasant boating. Um, when I was like 17, I went on vacation to Hawaii, and I remember on the first day there we were driving. We went to the Big Island of Hawaii. The Big Island is kind of like the entire island is like a small town because there's lots of like very little like towns and like really old buildings interspersed with these massive stretches of like uh, tall grass and tropical plants, and it's really beautiful actually. First night we were there, we were driving down this road in the town of Kona, I want to say. I think it was in Kona. We're driving down this mountain road, and I get this view of the sun setting over the ocean, and it's one of the most beautiful things I've seen in my entire life. Um, so with Thalaron, what I really wanted to capture was the sense of beauty and peace and rest. So beautiful that it makes you forget the U in the word beauty. It's, like the stuff about like the cool oceans, because it was really beautiful. Like I'm sorry, I kind of spaced out there for a moment. Actually, this is taking a long time, much longer than I expected. Illusionists love this place. I guess that's kind of a nod to like the Lotus Eater thing again. Um, fuck me. Um, whoops. Place of round softs. In the snow cone parlor where I was writing this thing, they had like a little tub of like these little like Japanese candies. I think they were serving mochi there as well, so that's that's where Akmi comes from. It's uh, it's an anagram of mochi, except I switched up the the K for an H. So there's that. How's that for flavor text? Uh, growing from the ground are strange pastel hemispheres of a gelatinous, mochi-like consistency. So yeah, there's that. Um, I feel like Acme would be somewhere close to Thalaron of the Clouds, actually. Yeah, I feel like Acme would be close to Thalaron. Mm. I imagine Thalaron in like various shades of purple because it's always like sort of twilight-ish there. I don't know if that's gonna make it into the final cut. We'll see. This should be quite tasty. And finally, there's one last place. Chalagrin. Maybe based off the word chagrin, I'm not really sure. So Chalagrin is palace under the marsh. Hang on, wait, this is probably gonna annoy me later. There we go. Palace under the marsh. An ancient set of ruins beneath the marsh of the same name. Some say Marsh Court still dwells within its sunken, algae-covered walls. There we go. I'm sorry, I hope my typos aren't annoying you too much. It's a little tricky for me to, click off screen. Yeah, I think we've gotten everything we need to from my notebook. I'm gonna put that to one side. So the thing with the Marsh Court, right? Okay. So what I was imagining when I thought of the Marsh Court still dwelling within the sunken, algae-covered walls, in the first Chronicles of Narnia book, the one that you're supposed to read first, because it was like the sixth one that was published, The Magician's Nephew. There's a part in the story about halfway through where the protagonists find themselves on this completely like destroyed world, and they're in this ruined city, and they go into this palace. There's this hallway that's lined with what seems to be like these wax figures of like these ancient kings and queens, like sitting in their thrones, looking not dead but asleep. And that's kind of what I was imagining with the Marsh Court. I'm imagining like this drowned ballroom, and like against the far wall are like all these thrones where like these people in like these in like this tattered finery are like sitting there like they're keeping court. So that's what I was imagining with the Marsh Court. I don't know if that's actually what's going to go down with it. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so that's everything. That's all the seeds. City of 10,000 Spires. Does Comgary, Thal around with the clouds, Octamy, and Chalagrin. I suppose we could start tending to these. We can start building on these. Okay. I've actually been thinking about this podcast and the story we're going to write in it quite a lot. So, and I've actually thought of a few characters I want to use. Let's go to names. I don't think names is, names is pretty apt. Okay, so when I was thinking about the story, I was thinking, who do I want for my protagonist, and what do we want to do with it? And I'm thinking I want my protagonist to be an everyman. We'll I wanted a female protagonist, and you know what? I'm gonna give her a placeholder name for now. Let's gonna call her Eve. I'd like to make a note of where names came from. It's just like a little something I like to do. Like when I come back to a document like 6 months later, I'm thinking, wait, what was the meaning behind that? So Eve is going to be a placeholder name for our protagonist. Um, I might not change it at all, actually. So our protagonist is named Eve. Um, so Eve is kind of like an everyman, but I don't want her to be bland, and I don't want her to seem like really snarky or anything like that. Even though a lot of us are, a lot of us can be really sarcastic. Um, so as the name implies, let's shake things up. There we go. I feel like there's a lot of emphasis on making our characters, not like other girls or different somehow, and that's okay. Um, Sometimes we can all feel like we don't belong, and so having that otherness to grab onto can make a character more relatable. Um, so I guess that's what happens if it's done well. If it's done poorly, it turns everyone else into a straw man. So we're gonna see. We're gonna make Eve an everyman. So we got that. Um, Here's something that I'd forgotten about. I used to have this notebook. I brought it with me on a vacation once, and I tried to write down everything I saw and did that day because I wanted to remember it. And I wasn't able to write everything down, but I was able to get about half of it. And I remember there was this man I saw. Um, he looked like he had just gotten back from fishing because he was dressed entirely in these green fishing waders. Um, he's I don't know if that's going to be his name permanently, but we'll just leave it as that. The man in the fishing waders. Um, he was really silent, and he sat hunched over, um, not really talking and looking like really surly and stuff. He had his broken fishing pole with him. At least it looked broken. I think it might have been because like the fishing line was way too short. Um, and I remember seeing him kind of like grimace or something, and he had like these really pointy teeth. I don't know if this is something my memory has embellished or not, but he had like these really pointy teeth, and they kind of reminded me of like fish teeth. Um, he was a really fascinating one. Um, and I remember looking at this man thinking, I could write a character just like this. I still don't know who that man was. He probably doesn't remember me, and he probably wouldn't recognize himself as the man in the fishing waders. I don't know anything about him, but I just remember thinking he was kind of strange looking, and I wanted to hold on to that. I felt like he had some stories to tell. Um, so the man in the fishing waders. I'm gonna see if I can build a character entirely off what I remember him. Okay. And there's one more character I think I should jot down. Golden Orb King. I really don't know what to do with. Well, it does sound like the name of some kind of cosmic horror. I'm probably thinking of the King in Yellow, actually, as I type this out. That's probably exactly what I'm thinking about. Um, Although I'm imagining it was kind of like a Lovecraftian horror, like um like the kind of like the character who can like see beyond the veil of sleep and things like that. You know, I can see into the minds of the other characters. I don't know. We'll see how the Golden Art King goes. Let's take this one step further. Just like other girls. Um, so I'm thinking about this campaign setting. Campaign setting. I'm sorry. This setting, this world. Um, his name implies relatable everyman, just like other girls. Um, I'm going to try something a little bit risky with this story. I'm going to make it a what they in fantasy circles call a portal fantasy. So, a portal fantasy is like when a character from the mundane world, our world, the real world, ends up transported into like a fantastical realm beyond our reality. So that's things like Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz, Chronicles of Narnia, things like that. Um, Portal fantasy, from what I've read, seems to be quite tricky to pull off because you run the risk of creating a Narnia clone or an Alice clone or something like that. Um, but I think we're gonna try to make this one a Portal fantasy because in because if the places described in Seeds are anything to go by, I feel like an everyman couldn't really grow there. If you were surrounded by all this weird stuff, you wouldn't think it's strange at all. I think I know where I want this to start off. Okay, so I said this was a portal fantasy, right? I really like sort of like playing with old tropes and seeing if you can, twist them around, make them work, make cliches feel good again. So outline. Hmm. Chapter one. So, well, she is. He was a pretty average person. Um, I've noticed that like a lot of the places I described seem really surreal and stuff. So I feel like in order to enter this realm, Eve is going to go to sleep one night, and she's just going to wake up there. And we'll see how this goes. That sounds horribly, horribly unoriginal. Um, Here goes. One night, and forgive me if this isn't the prettiest of prose. It's only an outline. I tend to get really like detailed with the outlines though. Awakens. I've been thinking about this actually. Um, I don't know why I picked an island. I think I actually know where the island this guy comes from. Hang on, let me pull it up. There was this Flash game I played ages and ages ago. It was called Everloom, the Everloom, right? And oh gosh, this is gonna seem really horribly unoriginal. In the Everloom, the protagonist goes to sleep, finds himself on this island in the sky, and has to find a way to return to the waking world. Uh, that was the plot of the Everloom, and there's like all these weird characters he meets along the way. There's like this little girl who has this pet frog that eats balloons. Um, there was an ice cream seller, and I'm realizing now how horribly trite and unoriginal this all seems. But I don't think it has to be. Um, I think I can, take something that looks like it's going to be a complete ripoff of something else and, turn it on its head. So it's like not the same thing at all. Um, for example, I thought that Coco was going to be a ripoff of the Book of Life. I'm sure everyone thought that, but no, they're two completely different stories, each with their own themes and merits and things like that. So, making an eye on the sky. The island, home. Okay, so the island is home. So I've been thinking about the island in the sky. I've already told you I've been thinking about the island a lot, and oh, we only have like 9 minutes. So I'm gonna say what I need to say really, really quickly. The island in the sky. So it's this floating island. I'm just imagining, and this is gonna sound really weird. You should be tethered to the moons. The setting I'm in has a lot of moons. We might. It depends on how realistic we want to go with this. It used to be tethered to the moons. I don't know how many moons there are. We'll work on that later. We're gonna have to name that island the sky later and the village on it, but that's wait, hang on. I like the name Moon Anchor, but let's see if it's already been used for something. Moon Anchor Apparel. Guess we can take a look at that. Looks like it was somebody's startup that just like never got off the ground. Okay. Or maybe it's like a very new startup. We'll see. Guess it doesn't really matter. So it was called Moon Anchor. Maybe I'll rename it. Maybe I won't. But I quite like the name Moon Anchor. I'm trying to imagine what the island would look like, and for some reason, I'm picturing something that looks like a bunch of wasp nests stuck together. Because I want to go for something really surreal. I'm sorry if this, like, because I'm imagining, like, these sort of weird, umbrella things. Like, oh, am I thinking of paper wasp nests? Because, like, there's a certain species of moth, they make, not moth, wasp, they make these nests, and they're kind of shaped like upside-down umbrellas, and they've got, like, the cones underneath. Let me get those out of the way, because they're really freaky looking, and they're kind of scaring me. So imagining, like, that in the bottom. Bowls full of eggs. We're going to talk about the eggs later when I think of what they are. So imagining like the upside down thing. And then I'm going to pull up more wasp nests. Just fair warning. I probably should have warned you before. No, not. I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of yellow jacket nests? No. Oh. Oh, hell. I'm sorry, I saw that out of the corner of my eye and it really freaked me out. I actually remember what that is. It's just a mask that a bunch of hornets built a nest in. That was really freaky. I'm sorry. Um, I can't think of the name of it, but there's like a certain species of wasp, and they build like these sort of really ripply nests that kind of look like waterfalls. Um, um, I think they have some limited trade with the other parts of the world. So let's see. I'm thinking about this one. Dreams are strange things, and I feel like that would be something that might be fun to build on, to capitalize off of. Elements of cosmic horror. I'm gonna have to get back into reading some Lovecraft. Last I read off, I think I was reading Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, and I made it halfway through, and I never finished it. Um, so we're gonna be slipping in some of that cosmic horror in there. Keep on the lookout for that. Then we're gonna trade with other parts of the world. So we're doing. Looks like we're doing inside out world building, focusing on each of the little places and seeing how they're all joined together. Um, I'm gonna trade with other parts of the world. Um, event called the Splitting of the Sky. Actually, do I want to go with the Splitting of the Sky? Let's keep that unnamed for now. Open up. Tentacles reach down. That might be relevant later. All right, and one more thing I want to go about. That's very important. I think we're gonna have to try to figure out why it was chained to the moons. All right, so what did we accomplish? We've done a little bit of world building. We talked about that island in the sky that the character starts off of. We've got our. We don't really have a premise, but we know how it starts off. We have a couple of characters. You got the man, the fishing waders, the golden orb king, and Eve, and we've laid down the things that we're going to build our story off of. Like how an oyster produces a pearl, a bit of sand gets inside the oyster, and the oyster keeps laying down like deposits and deposits of like calcium compounds, and it just grows and grows off that little grain. So I can see that happening. Um, Thank you very much for listening in. I'm sorry for my rambling. Um, I have high hopes for this podcast, and I hope that I can stick to it and keep updating you at least semi regularly. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you around.